What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today we are going over some updated NFL draft position rankings. Today we're doing the offense. We're going to do quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, so on and so forth. And then next video coming out tomorrow is going to be my defensive updated position ranking. So real quick question before we get started. Up until this point, I've done a video for each position group, and I basically bring 10 guys to the table. But if I can just peel back the curtain a little bit, those videos typically don't do well, especially once I get to positions that, are being searched, like quarterback and receiver and edge. So I get to the interior offensive line, and, those videos don't do well, so it kind of makes me wonder, is it worth all the time and the energy? So trying to do something a little different today and doing basically offense and defense. So let me know what you think. Would you rather me continue with this, and maybe next time I do this, it's 10 names per position? Or would you rather me go back to focusing on each position group as its own video? It's ultimately more views because it'd be like 12 videos instead of 10, or 12 videos instead of 2. But I wonder if, you guys have a hunger to see me dive into each position group, or you're just looking for, hey, where are your quarterback rankings right now? Where are your receiver rankings? Just give me a quick run through of each spot. So let me know what you guys think. I'm fine doing either one because there are pros and cons to each. So with that down, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Starting quarterbacks. I got Drake May at 1. To me, he's just kind of like the perfect blend of all these guys, Gets rid of the ball a little bit quicker than Caleb Williams, who, trust me, I'm still a big Caleb Williams believer. And that's really the only knock I have against Williams. He's got so many wow throws that from this year and last year. I mean, it's just ridiculous. He does some stuff that you don't even see people do in the backyard. It's crazy. So big time, arm talent on both these guys. Williams probably with the edge there. Both their accuracy, May probably a little bit better underneath. Williams probably do a little bit more over the top. They both have scrambling ability, can both move around the pocket. And to me, it just comes down to there's not a whole lot of quarterbacks to get rid of the ball quickly at the college level, and that tends to be a struggling point for rookies year 1 and 2. So with Williams already having that issue, that makes me a little concerned about what it might look like at the next level. Ultimately, I think he'll break through, but I don't have that concern with May, or let's take that as a transition into Michael Penix. I just love guys who push the ball down the field, big time throws and, just creating chunk plays. That's how you win games. And sometimes, Michael Penix gets himself into trouble and he'll just chuck it into double coverage because he knows Rome Odunze's somewhere down there and Jalen Polk's going to be somewhere over the middle of the field. I don't care where the safety's at, stuff like that. And, that's not ideal. But I think that can be cleaned up, and you can just basically, you can dial back the aggression meter, just a little bit the next level. But awesome pocket presence. Only took 30 sacks over a 6-year college career. A lot of injuries in there, but still 30 sacks, even just the last 2 years. That's crazy that he has so few. Great pocket maneuverability. The throwing motion is a little weird, but he's got plenty of arm talent. Can drop it in a basket deep down the field, and it's really just that deep downfield passing that I love. And also, like I said with May, a lot of times rookie quarterbacks hit the ground and they have a hard time playing with timing and playing in the rhythm and offense. And, look at Zach Wilson. He's year 4, and he's still struggling with that for the most part this season. Penix plays in a very timing-based offense. Now, it can be a little gimmicky because of that, but, the guy can get the ball out quick. He doesn't take sacks, but he also has arm strength and deep ball placement to be a guy who can stretch the field. So, does that look better with Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan? Yeah, for sure. So maybe he needs to go to a place that has receivers who can elevate that. Maybe he's just kind of a system guy because of that. But I just love guys who can take those chances while also minimizing those big-time negative plays like sacks. Then we get to Jaden Daniels, the Heisman winner. I've really grown on, and it's tough. I saw somebody float this out on X, and I can't remember what it was, but when you just forget about Arizona State, just take that you're just whatever your notion was on Jaden Daniels during his time as a Sun Devil, just throw that away and just watch the LSU film. And once you get rid of that, you see that this guy is going to go top. He's going to go top 15. It's probably going to go top 10 if I'm honest. And ultimately, the only reason I have Daniels just a little bit below Penix, because I could be sold on either one of these guys. Daniels you could probably do a little bit more with his legs. Daniels, that offense is, it's checkdowns, it's hitches, and it's vertical. It's all kind of layered linearly, not a whole lot of inbreakers and outbreakers. So, I wish I could see what his arm looks like, trying to fit in that 12-yard out route along the sideline, getting there before the DB. That's just some stuff that we haven't seen. But he has great, again, pocket presence, enough NFL arm strength, really accurate passer, and on top of the mobility and just the growth that we've seen, even just the last 2 years at LSU. Just signals to me this guy's still getting better and better and better. So, and I also think we've kind of hit a point in scouting where it's maybe don't just go for the young guy just because you think there's perceived upside. There is something in the notion that this guy's played a whole lot of college football, and Jaden Daniels has 5 years of starting experience. So that makes me feel confident that at the next level, he'll be able to pick up an offense, hit the ground running basically and be a day one starter, which I think will be coveted by NFL teams. And then we get Bo Nix, just ahead of JJ McCarthy, and I think it's really easy to just say black or white, is this guy good or bad, and that's where a lot of people are with JJ McCarthy. I am very much some shade of gray. There are things about him that I really like. I think there are tools and there's traits, and I tend to be a tools traits guy. Even if that means like the production's not great, i.e. Will Levis, my QB2, Josh Allen, my QB1 back in 2018. That comes with some upside, that comes with some downside for sure. And I like JJ McCarthy, but I still think there's a lot of things he needs to improve upon. And I mean, specifically touch. Like, the guy just does not play with any touch. And sometimes that leads to receiver drops. It also leads to some airmail throws over the middle of the field. And I just think there's a little bit more evolution needed to his game, which makes me think that maybe he'll go back to Michigan. Like, I could see where one more year in college, he kind of tacks on those little things I'm looking for, and then he puts himself into a first-round conversation next year. But we'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if he declares too. And then, to that point, no Shadir Sanders, no Quinn Ewers in this, because I don't think they're going to come out. And honestly, Shadir Sanders probably would have been QB3 for me, and then I don't know if Ewers makes the list, if I'm being transparent. And like I said, Bo Nix, old guy, but I love being able to see guys be able to pick up a new environment. Like, I talked about this all the time with Jared Verse, like going from Albany and then getting to Florida State and looking like you totally belong. I love that. And for Bo Nix, like, wasn't great at Auburn, learned a new offense and became a great, conductor of that train, that offense at Oregon. And yeah, that's a lot of screens, a lot of underneath, but I do think he's a pretty quick processor. I think he has NFL caliber arm strength. I think he has generally pretty good accuracy. When he lets it rip, sometimes, kind of like McCarthy, he'll airmail some throws over the middle of the field, which makes you hold your breath every time. But otherwise, like, I think there's a lot of tools and traits here, and he's a fairly mobile guy too. He just strikes me as someone I don't know if the upside's like through the roof. Like, his ceiling might just be like an above average guy, which is fine. Like, there are plenty of teams who would die for an above average quarterback. Trust me. In that said, I think his floor is relatively high because we've seen him learn a new offense. We've seen him just be kind of the guy pulling the strings, the maestro, just doing what he's told. I don't know if that's really a good way to use maestro, but just being the signal caller and the guy who just goes through the motions. Like, if he got into an offense that it was like Shanahan tree, like, I could totally see where he orchestrates that to a high level and puts some gaudy numbers up too. But I don't know if he's the guy who's going to elevate a situation like New England. Like, I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome, like, Juju Smith-Schuster might be your best receiver. That's kind of where I'm at with Bo Nix. But all these guys, just like I said last year, I think all these guys have an argument to go round one. Especially the top four, I think, deserve to go round one. I'm a little bit on the fringe of Nix, but I think there's enough love out there for him to where he's probably going to go round one. And last year, my QBs 1 through 4, I said all 4 of them should go in the top 10. That's how high I thought of them. So just because JJ McCarthy's not on this list doesn't mean I don't think he can't go round one. Just because Bo Nix is 5 doesn't mean I think he's just like a bozo. I think all 5 of these guys have an argument to go round one. And then we get to running backs. Blake Corum, I just love his vision and his contact balance. This guy is just a machine at picking up 8 yards. May not ever have the breakaway speed or anything like that, but man, just hits the hole, does it decisively, absorbs contact, falls forward. Like, he just does those little things right. And also, I think he's got enough third down ability. I don't know if he's going to be a great pass catcher or ever a great blocker to that matter, but I think there's enough there to where you can keep him down all 3 downs. And this isn't a great running back class, if I'm honest. I'm really looking forward to the 2024 class, or 2025, sorry. 2025 running back class looks pretty juiced, if I may say so myself. But this is just like a solid day 2 class. Like, a lot of 3rd and 4th round guys here that I think could be really solid contributors. I think Corum's the best of them. Trey Benson, a little bit more big play ability, a little bit more receiving ability, solid size as well. And, kind of became the heart of that Florida State offense down the stretch and handled it with, a lot of success. Honestly, he handled it as well as most running backs can do. So plays in the ACC. So I like a lot about what Benson brings to the table. I just don't see him as special as like a Bijan Robinson. Obviously, I just don't see him as like a round one guy. But if you're taking him somewhere in the 3rd, like, I think that's a really solid back to add maybe to the top of the committee, or it's just like your number 2 punch. And then Jonathan Brooks, obviously at the ACL injury, but up until that point, man, he had an argument maybe to steal away that number 1 spot. But I need to see what the timeline of the injury is going to be. And I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, you see an ACL injury for a quarterback, and you're like, it's fine. It's all good. But for a running back, it's like, okay, well, what does that mean for the change of direction, the explosiveness, all that sort of stuff? So it's a little bit of a bummer. But man, love his ability to run between the tackles, love the vision, kind of the contact balance. A lot of the same stuff I said about Blake Corum. Now I just got to see how he recovers from that injury, because if he's the same guy he was pre-injury, like I said, you could tell me an argument where he's RB1. If not, he's definitely my RB2. But if he lost a little bit of juice, then yeah, I'll probably put Benson just ahead of him. Bucky Irving, love his pass catching ability and just a big play waiting to happen with Bucky Irving. So love that ability. And he is just like Devon Achane in the sense that I love these guys who you can steer and you don't stop accelerating. Like Devon Achane's like actively turning left and right, and he's still at like 100% speed or gaining speed. And Bucky Irving has that. And I feel like I maybe underrated that in Devon Achane. He was still a running back I liked a ton, had a day 2 grade on him. And I see that with Bucky Irving, so I don't want to like miss it this time around. Like that type of ability to change directions and still hit your top speed, maintain top speed, get to top speed is crazy, and it just blows my mind because I definitely could never do anything like that. So I wanted to make sure I covered that trait, and so he's at number 4. And then Braylon Allen, I mean, just a true size speed freak with a ton of production too. I do worry about the tread on the tires with Allen, and I can see where NFL teams have that concern. But if you're looking for a bulldozer, run between the tackles, run hard downhill, pick up 5 yards and a pound of dust. Yeah, like, this is your guy. Again, don't think he's going to be a big play threat. Don't know if he's going to break off any 80-yarders every game for you, or anything like that. But if you're just looking for that power complement, I think Braylon Allen's a really nice guy. And this is where we get into Bucky Irving. I think 3rd round could make some sense if you're looking for that scat back, that big play threat. Braylon Allen, maybe late 3rd. I'm thinking more early 4 because you're just kind of missing that power back element, and he's the guy you want to key in on for that. All right, let's get on to wide receivers. No real surprise here. Marvin Harrison Jr. If I took position value out of the equation, he'd be my number 1 prospect on my big board. But I do weigh position value, so he's going to end up being 3, just behind Drake May and Caleb Williams. But still, Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, the easiest way to describe it's just like adding 3 to 4 inches and about 20 pounds of muscle to his dad. Really sharp route runner. Did a little bit more after the catch this year, which I really was excited about. Think he can get a little bit better and more consistent with his release packages. But I'm nitpicking. And, everything else, yards after the catch, like I said, big part of his game. Overcame Kyle McCord, so we kind of just saw him have to force himself into a different role, and Ohio State have to change their offense a little bit to make sure he's getting the same amount of touches, which was a lot easier to do with C.J. Stroud attacking the ball deep down the field last year. So kind of a different role for him. Anytime Ohio State needed a big play, 18 was there. So it's the route running, it's the hands, it's the size, the physicality, it's everything. I mean, this guy's just a stud. Best receiver prospect since Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase was heralded as the best since Julio, so like maybe there's even an argument that Marvin Harrison's the best since Julio. Maybe people think that he's got a higher grade than Jamar Chase, and if you feel that way, I don't hate it whatsoever. Then we get Malik Neighbors, just like a rare mover, man. I see a lot of Stephon Diggs, honestly, like just big play threat, but also like just sharp out of his breaks, really strong hands, comes and attacks the football. That's like my one thing. Like a lot of times, like you see 6 foot, 190 pound receivers or whatever Neighbors officially like clocks in at combine, pro day, whatever it ends up being. A lot of those guys just like don't feel like they come and get a football. Like I'm just thinking like imagine a curl route and a receiver's just waiting for the ball to get there. That's not Neighbors. Neighbors is actively like he's willing to sacrifice 2 yards if he's going to go get the football and be the first to touch it and try to do something after the catch or just get to it before a DB. I just love that aggressiveness, and it kind of makes him feel and play bigger than his actual size and his weight. So there's not a whole lot of nitpicks. And like Malik Neighbors, maybe there's an argument he should have won the Blitnikoff this year. Like this is a special receiver class. And I mean, same thing with Rome Odunze. Like these were the 3 finalists for an awesome reason. These 3 should all go top 12 to me. Rome Odunze's been my guy. I've loved him from the start of the season. I know a lot of people did not have him as receiver 3. I did. And he may not be like the most insane yards after the catch threat, but he does everything else. 6'3", 200 pounds, can win deep down the field. I think a route runner who can win at all 3 levels, can be your possession guy, can be a deep threat, you name it. Like I think this is a guy that no matter what offense you drop him in, he's going to be a pretty solid player. And whatever role within that offense you ask him, he can fill that role. So just a big fan of Rome Odunze. And just these top 3 receivers are crazy good. But there's a lot of depth to this class. So you can go 15 names deep in this group and like still have a lot of really good options that are going to be there day 2. So that's going to be the interesting conversation with this class moving forward. It's like these top 3 are freaks. Like they're awesome. I think they could all be like all pro level players. We could also have the chance of hitting on someone like that in round 2. Could you address another need in round 1? So it's going to be really interesting to see where that conversation goes. I got Keon Coleman at 4. Look, he's just not a sharp route runner. Like that's not really where he wins. He's much more of the like I'm going to go win it in the air. Again, circus highlight reel catches, contested catches. Of course, he had that one-handed snag that like shocked college football. Might have been the catch of the year. Like it was insane. Former basketball player at Michigan State, so like can jump through the roof. Awesome downfield speed. Will be a big-time combine winner for sure. Just needs some refinement, but I think that can be coached up. Like I see he's such a twitchy athlete, and I see the progression he made from Michigan State to Florida State, and even just over the last 2 years. And I'm like, this guy's still learning. Like he's figuring it out. So with that said, I wouldn't be shocked. And to be honest, with how good of an athlete he is, I kind of said the same thing last year about like Quentin Johnston, and it's kind of the same thing that I think is true about DK Metcalf. Like, give this guy 5 routes. We obviously want the go. We want the post. And then, like, give me a slant and a comeback. Like, basically just to keep DBs honest. Oh, is he running the go or is he running the comeback? Just like a little bit of compliments there. I think you're fine. Like, this guy's such an athletic freak. If you give him a 4 to 5 route tree, like, I think that's all he needs. And he's such an insane specimen that, like, DBs will still fear him. Like, so I think, honestly, year one, keep it simple and just let him just be a monster. 6'4", 200 pounds, and like, or 215 pounds probably. We'll see what he weighs in it again. So, and it's insane. He's in that same offense as Johnny Wilson, and like, you watch him and it's like, man, I never thought 6'4" would not look like a monster, but that's what happens when 6'7's on the other side. And I still like Johnny Wilson. He's off the list here. Emeka Egbuka gets the final spot. I still think there's a lot of upside there. Last year was definitely better than this past season, but I still see a guy who maybe he ends up being slide only, but even if that's the case, sharp route runner, a lot of bursts out of his breaks too. May not have the long speed, but I think he's more quick than fast, and solid hands too. So just does a lot of the things, little things right. And this is kind of like, if I'm going to compare it to last year's classes, kind of where we start to get into, like, maybe Jackson Smith-Njigba could have been in this conversation, just because if Egbuka does become slide only, like, okay, there's enough skill sets that are similarly aligned, maybe you could have a conversation. And at number 6 is Tez Walker from UNC. I'm a big Tez Walker guy. I really almost had him jump Egbuka here. Like the size, like the athleticism, and I generally like the hands. And I mean, like, you go back to his Kent State tape and, like, see the Georgia game. Like, I know Trevor Sickmo was talking about this on the NFL Stock Exchange, and kind of, I like this Kent State tape, but it piqued my curiosity to go back to the Georgia game, and my God, he's doing this against 2021 Georgia, 2022 Georgia, like one of the best defenses of college football history. And he's, I don't want to say he's having his way, but like he's looking pretty good against Kamar Lassiter, right? Like he's doing his thing, and he's doing it at obviously a lower level competition. And I think when he got to UNC, he looked really good, and he kind of gave Drake May like a dude. Like Drake May for the first like 3 to 4 games pre Walker coming out of the suspension was just having to figure it out, throw it to a lot of different guys. It was, 12 completions to 8 different receivers, kind of struggling along. And then he got Tez Walker, and it's like, all right, cool. Like, I need a big play. I know who I'm looking to. So, yeah, big fan of Tez Walker. But again, this is a super deep receiver class, so there's really not a whole lot of wrong answers here. Tight end group, really, it's the top 2 here. Brock Bowers, probably the best tight end prospect I've ever scouted. Not even probably. He is definitively the best tight end prospect I've ever scouted. Maybe a little underweight, but it doesn't affect his blocking whatsoever, so I'm not concerned about it. You could also just play slot receiver, and I'm fine with that too. Yards after the catch, contested catchability, enough route running too, to where he can win both from the tight end spot and a slot position. He's a complete tight end prospect. You can't ask for much more than this. JT Sanders is still someone I'm a big fan of. Really solid blocker, high-end athlete. There were a lot of mouths to feed there at Texas, so the production's not off the charts, but this guy's going to be a workout warrior, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are like, damn, we add him to our offense at tight end. Like, think about the mismatches we can create against linebackers, and, think about what we can do in the RPO game and have him slipping in behind a line, all that sort of stuff. All those little things, or just even running seam routes. Like, this guy's just going to be a freak just because of, size and speed. Like, that, if not anything else, is a reason to consider him, like, round 2. So, big JT Sanders fan. Wasn't the breakout season I thought it might be. Not quite like it was, 2022, 23, but still a really good player. And with a lot of mouths to feed, I didn't worry too much about the production. I just look at the skills that he has and the traits that are there, and I just can't see how he makes it past like pick 64. I just can't see this guy making another 3rd round, if I'm honest. Cade Stover, this is where we get boring, because like Cade Stover's basically the complete opposite of JT Sanders. Like, not a high-end athlete, but just like a technically sound player, sits in soft zones, really nice blocker, ideal frame and strength to go with it, good hands. Just, he's your prototypical safety blanket. Like, think about safety blanket tight ends. That's Cade Stover. Bryson Nesbitt, a little bit more of a field stretcher. I think a lot of people have kind of soured on him, and I just like the athleticism that's there. And it's kind of like JT Sanders. He's almost like poor man's JT Sanders in a lot of ways, where it's like, I just look at those traits and that athleticism, and I just can't see where teams are like, man, to have that guy running the seam, like, nah, we'll pass on that. It's like, I can't see that. So really nice combination of size plus that, field stretching ability. He is a vertical based tight end. Like, I don't think he has a lot of that underneath, find the soft spot in his zone skills that Cade Stover does. So it really comes down to who you have on the roster. But if you're just looking for a little bit more athleticism, trying to challenge the middle of the field, I think Bryson Nesbitt's a really solid 3rd, 4th-ish round. Honestly, if we're talking 3rd round, once we get to like pick 85, I'm fine with it, but can't really see it being a whole lot better. This is not a great tight end class after the top 2. And then Dallin Hooker, like, I'm really intrigued by this North Dakota State pipeline that they have a tight end, but a high-end athlete, enough size too. Like, this is just gonna be a guy where I want to see how he competes against higher level of competition, and then the play strength too. That might be a little bit of a concern for me, but otherwise, like, I think the guy's got it. And honestly, we've seen a nice little pipeline, like I said, of North Dakota State tight ends, like, having a lot of success at the NFL level. So I'm intrigued. And again, it's not a great tight end class. So at this point, let me take a chance on the small school guy that looks like he can play, looks like a guy who can play at the NFL level from a size and frame standpoint, and then looks like a high-end athlete. Now, is that just because they're playing lower-level competition? We'll have to wait and see. We'll see what the combine numbers have, but he looks like he's got it from an athletic standpoint to stick at the next level, in my opinion. Then we get to tackles, and I totally cheated here. Joe Alt is my 1A. Olu Fashanu is my 1B. I think I covet the balance that Joe Alt brings. Like, he's a much better run blocker than Olu ever has been. That being said, Olu's mirroring ability and his footwork for a guy who's been a 2-year starter is just unbelievable. So that lateral movement is it's insane. And then Joel doesn't really have that twitchiness, being able to go left and right, but he gets the position. Multi-year starter, unanimous All-American, just technically refined. Like, this guy doesn't need coaching. You just plug him in. It's not going to be flashy. It's not going to be sexy, but damn, you're going to love the results. And that's kind of where I feel about Alt. And again, a little bit better of a run blocker. So depending on what your scheme is, I think I prioritize that over Olu. So the Talise Fuaga, I guess, comes in at 3. Him and Latham, it's just floor versus ceiling argument. And I typically, if I do position rankings before the draft, I'll probably break this up into tiers just so you guys can do this, see kind of where my mind's more at. And I typically break tiers into a floor guy and a ceiling guy, just so that way it's like I think of these guys pretty similarly. It just comes down to what's your risk appetite. Do you want to take a swing of the bat and say, hey, Latham's not going to be a penalty machine at the next level? He's got the athleticism, great movement skills, and he's a big guy. We're going to be able to flip him to left tackle. He's only played right tackle. Or, hey, we're just going to plug and play, and he's going to be our right tackle of the future. We buy into the upside. Cool. If you have the risk appetite for that, I could totally see where he's 3. But I could also see where you're just like, hey, Talise Fuaga, I know what I'm getting. He may not be anything special athletically, but kind of like Joe Alt, he's quick enough out of his stance. He's great run game mauler, and he's held up a ton in pass protection. Maybe a little bit more of a gap scheme guy than a zone blocking scheme guy. Latham probably fits in either one, but I'd love to see his athleticism in a zone blocking scheme. That feels a little unfair. So that may also play a factor into this too, gap versus zone. But to me, it's really floor versus ceiling. And, I tend to be a traits guy, but I don't know, the penalties from a year ago for Latham, I just worry about those coming back. And I just really impressed with Talise Fuaga. And maybe that's also my expectation. Like, Latham was a guy I was excited about coming into the season. Fuaga was someone who was completely off my radar. So maybe that also plays a factor into it. And then my preseason number 3 tackle was Kingsley Suamataia. Still a huge fan of his game. Not necessarily the best run blocker, but there were points last season, not this season that just finished, but the year before that, where it felt like he was making some progress in the run game, but just hasn't been able to maintain that, unfortunately. But huge, massive human being, like 6'8", 330. Love the footwork. Love the mirroring ability. 4-star recruit too. So like he's had eyes on him. He's been highly touted for a little bit. And I feel like he's going a little under the radar right now. And maybe he's a little on the raw side. Maybe you're looking at him and he's like, oh, BYU, it's not quite the same as like, oh, a Notre Dame tackle. Oh, a Penn State tackle. Oh, an Alabama. Yeah, sure, for sure. Different levels of competition, no doubt. But man, all I see when I watch BYU, I'm like, dude, Suamataia is one, like a massive human being, and you naturally have your eyes on him. But like, man, especially in the pass game, I kind of think he makes the thing go. Like, so really impressed with what I've seen the last 2 years out of him in pass pro, and almost kind of feels like a poor man's Olu Fashanu. Like, I think his frame and his footwork, especially considering all the attention goes to Olu, goes a little underrated in this class. I think Suamataia's footwork is not too far off. Into your offensive line, I cheated a little bit. I put guards and centers in here. Lump them together again. If we do this in the future, let me know if you want to separate, guards, centers. Let me know how nuanced basically you want me to make this. But into offensive line, Cody Barton, may not have looked as good this year at Duke, but go back to 2022-23, and he was awesome. And I think arm length's basically going to kick him inside to play guard. I know Dane Brugler and Mel Kiper Jr. see him as a center, and I'm fine with that. So that's also part of the reason I went into offensive line. Whether it's guard or center, I think Barton's going to be awesome player. Troy Fontenot, if you watched that Washington-Oregon Pac-12 championship game, you saw this man leading the way. Same thing with Barton. Arm length's going to keep him inside a guard. I don't think he'll play center. So he'll play guard and he'll lead the way. And again, if you watch that Washington and Oregon Pac-12 championship game, he did it multiple times for the Huskies in that game, just kind of leading the way. So, man, I think he's going to be an immediate plug-and-play left guard at the next level. Then we get Jackson Powers Johnson. Man, he kind of gives me Tyler Linderbaum vibes, but he's 25 pounds heavier, which takes away a lot of the strength concerns that we had with Linderbaum. But yeah, man, in an offense that is very screen heavy, which requires the center to be light on their feet, get to the next level, and pave the way. Like, he has embraced that challenging role in that offense and handled it perfectly. Like, he, in a lot of ways, like, center's an underrated part of that Oregon offense. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, Troy Franklin, Bucky Irving, and Bo Nix makes it go. But without Jackson Powers Johnson being as good of a center, being able to get to the next level, without him being as good as he is, that offense isn't as efficient. And it's like nobody wants to talk about it because, centers aren't sexy. So, but I think he was a big part of the mix there. and a really underrated player for Oregon. But to me, he's the top center in this class. We get Zach Center, highest graded, Big Ten interior offensive lineman. And, if not for the injury, there's maybe an argument that he's at 3, and then I put Jackson Powers Johnson at 4, but, guard versus center, it's a little different. But it sounds like the timeline, it was a scary injury in that last game that he played at Michigan, but it sounds like it's just going to be a few months, should be ready by the start of next season. So it doesn't sound like it's anything too destructive, which is awesome. And that makes me super happy to see, because like I said, that injury was super scary, but multi-year awesome player. It's just not much more to it. Strength, size, enough movement skill, next to the complete package. I just got to see how he bounces back from the injury. And then we get to Christian Hayes, a guy I like a ton, pretty good athlete, 6'3", 315. Really, to me, more of a zone guy than, a gap scheme guy, because I don't know if the play strength's totally there. Comes from a smaller school at UConn. That'll be a gripe that some people have, but I think in a zone blocking scheme, getting this guy up to the next level, letting this guy move forward, it's just going to be awesome. So, and a guy that's a small school guy, but is starting to get some love. And really over the last month and a half, I'm starting to hear Christian Hayes' name a lot, which is awesome, because I think he really deserves it. And then, after this, it's maybe a little bit of a drop in this class. It's a little tough. There were a few other guys I thought about here, but this 5 feels pretty solid to me. And then, guys, that does it for my updated offensive NFL draft position rankings. Let me know what you think about all these rankings. Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who would I leave off that you're like, no way, this guy's not a top 5 player at this position? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as long as you're respectful about it, I respond to your comment, and let's have that conversation down below. And again, let me know what you think. Would you rather do a video for each position group, or is this more kind of what you're looking for? Just give me some quick hitting thoughts on each of these position groups and the guys within it. Love to know your thoughts on that as well. But guys, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.